Hello, good morning. Welcome to the final Sunday supplement of 2019. Coming up on today's show, David Moyes. He's on the brink of return to West Ham. Manuel Pellegrini was sacked yesterday following the 2-1 defeat at home to Leicester. Carlo Ancelotti, he makes it 2 out of 2 at Everton. Dominic Calvert-Lewin scored both in their win at Newcastle. And Mikel Arteta, he takes charge of his first home game at Arsenal. They take on Chelsea at the Emirates this afternoon. In the hot seat with us today, Martin Samuel, he's chief sports writer at the Daily Mail. John Cross is chief football writer at the Mirror. Ollie Holt is the chief sports writer at the Mail on Sunday. Morning all. Thanks very much for joining us, particularly to you, Ollie, because you drove down from Turf Moor last night, didn't you, where you saw Manchester United beat Burnley. Good to see you on the programme as ever. Don't forget you can tweet the show at Sunday Sup. The best will appear on screen over the next 90 minutes. Let's have a look at the papers then. This morning back of the Sun. It's the hammer blow. Pellegrini is axed at West Ham after that defeat. David Moyes, we believe, will succeed him, will return to West Ham on an 18-month contract. Mail on Sunday, they don't care. This is Guardiola. He's upset with the festive fixture programme. He knew what it was all about when he took the job, but he's still not happy. Manchester City play later on today against Sheffield United. It's the guard of honour. He's sticking around, though, for next year's festive fixture programme. According to Simon Mullock on the back page of the Mirror, he can end all doubts about whether Guardiola stays or goes. He is staying, according to Simon this morning. Yesterday's action via humbug at Carrow Road. Norwich upset. They didn't win yesterday, drew 2-2. Harry Kane scoring from the penalty spot. He saved Tottenham yesterday. Here to stay. Troy Deeney, love this man, scored last week against Manchester United. He was at it again yesterday. Watford within sight of moving out of the bottom three in the Premier League. Deeney on song, scoring goals yesterday against Aston Villa, as was this man, Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Couple for him at Newcastle, scored all the goals under Carlo Ancelotti. Big win, 2 out of 2 for Ancelotti so far. Martin's favourite subjects, his favourite form of communication, social media, how it changed football. There's a little quiz in the Sunday Times this morning about social media and how it really did change football and footballers' lives. Maybe we'll ask the guests as we go into each break this morning for a bit of fun. We'll get onto that quiz in the Sunday Times a little bit later. Martin, there's only one place to start, of course, this morning, and that's West Ham United. Manuel Pellegrini. Did they have to make this decision? Is it the right decision? And if it's going to be David Moyes, is he the right man to lead West Ham away from danger?
Did they have to make the decision?
Yeah.
I think they had to do something, yeah. I think they had to do something in the end. Whether it is all the manager's fault at West Ham, that's a totally different issue.
Yep.
Players have got to take responsibility, and the people at the helm of the club have got to take degrees of responsibility as well. So I don't think it's all about the manager, because if you look at where West Brom are in the Championship table, it turns out Slaven Bilic isn't actually a bad manager. So you know, there is something about the club that good managers don't seem to last too long there without it falling apart. But yeah, they had to do something. I mean, yesterday's performance was. I mean, that's Leicester's Carabao Cup team, isn't it? I mean, it might even be weaker than Leicester's Carabao Cup team.
It was the B team.
I'm trying to think of the team they put out in the Carabao Cup against Villa. And you know, West Ham weren't there, and it just looks as if it's drifting. It's the same problems again. They've got the worst statistics to do with running and the worst statistics to do with effort, and you can talk about technique and stuff like that, but if you're not prepared to run about, you're stuffed. And yesterday it looks as if West Ham weren't prepared to run about. Yeah,
even with Fabianski back in goal, that was their main man at the start of the season. They were talking about, well, they were talking the start of the season. Now they were talking about with the exception of the 5-0 defeat at home on the opening day of the season against Manchester City, John. They were talking about Champions League football.
Well, certainly the top 6, weren't they? European football, making a push for it. And I have to say that they backed the manager to the hilt, really, with signings, with recruitment. And credit where credit's due, actually. A lot of other clubs would have pulled the trigger a lot quicker. And that's something, actually, in West Ham's, to their credit. They've always been reluctant, I felt. I mean, blimey, you can criticise the managerial appointments, if you like, but once they're in, they tend to give them time. They tend to give them opportunities.
Not like David Moyes.
Well, they shouldn't have got rid of David Moyes, should they? They should have stuck with David Moyes. And I just
didn't really get rid of him, did they? The contract came to an end.
Yeah, and they didn't make him the permanent manager.
And they should have stuck with Moyes. And they basically, I think they made one of their biggest recent managerial mistakes in getting rid of Moyes, because Moyes gave them a new impetus, gave them a new energy, and gave them a direction. People were always, I was listening to the radio this morning on the way in, and they were sort of saying, oh yeah, but the West Ham fans never took to David Moyes and it'll be a problem. What do they want exactly? Because it's not Pellegrini's not worked for them. Pellegrini was a spectacular appointment. It really was. He's a Premier League title winner. We quickly forget that. And West Ham have gone for experience. They've gone for someone with a proven track record in the Premier League. And we all think about Pellegrini and question whether he's the real deal. Well, they've been ambitious. They've gone down that route. They've spent a lot of money this summer. And who do we blame now? It feels like West Ham have always gone for it, always been positive. And I just think one thing that they got seriously wrong was moving David Moyes on.
Well,
if they go back to Moyes, that's the correct decision, and I think then that he will lead them to safety and onwards and upwards.
I mean, in some ways, I suppose it's a courageous decision to go back to Moyes having... it's an admission of guilt, basically, or it's an admission of making the wrong decision before, because it's not a very good look going back to a guy that however you want to play it with the semantics, so you let him go,
see you later,
you fired or whatever, you let him go, you didn't renew his contract, and now you're going back to him having, as you say, appointed somebody in the interim that just didn't work. But I don't know. Martin would know far better than me how much enthusiasm amongst the fan base there is for Moyes.
And this is the problem, because of the issue they have around the unpopularity of the move to the London Stadium, that there is a lot of trying to keep the fans happy about West Ham. So David Moyes wasn't particularly popular because he was seen as being quite a doer manager, and the results, they were okay. They weren't the greatest. They were okay. They were relatively steady, and because he was perceived as being a doer manager, and I think I don't know if it was the season when there was the pitch invasion at Burnley against Burnley and stuff like that. I'm trying to think. I think it might even have been that season. So they were desperate to give the fans something to, with bells and whistles on it, basically, like a guy that's won the Premier League and the first South American to win the Premier League, and then we'll throw a load of money at it and all of this.
Although, as we know, in terms of bells and whistles, I totally agree with you about the Premier
He's not
League.
a bells and whistles guy.
He is this is a very shallow thing to say. He is possibly the least charismatic manager
Absolutely true.
I've ever come across. Which is saying something, to be fair.
No, he was known as the charming man, wasn't it?
That's when he won the title.
Everyone's charming when they win the title.
Yeah.
But he did play some good, expansive football during his time at West Ham, and that's what they've gone for, isn't it? They've gone for the manager who's won the title before. They've gone for the manager that is capable of getting performances and is getting some decent players in and making them work. I mean, they've made some good signings.
They've got some good players.
Anderson and
I love
Fornals, and Anderson's a terrific. Haller was a big signing in the summer.
Unless you want someone to tackle back, and that's unless you want someone to tackle back with Felipe Anderson, and that's what David Moyes has got to address, and that is perhaps why you're seeing. I mean, I saw other names mentioned, Tony Pulis and stuff like that. They want someone. It's the old football club thing. You go for the complete opposite of what you've originally got. So they want someone in there who is going to crack the whip a little, instill a little bit of discipline in there with guys like Felipe Anderson, who doesn't protect his fullback. Arthur, the left back, who I know David Moyes rates, but he's completely ill-disciplined. Now, whether Moyes will tolerate that at left-back, whether he pushes him further forward and plays him as a winger, which would seem almost to suit him more, things like that, I think that's what they want from David Moyes, or from whoever it is, but it's pretty certain it's David Moyes. They want someone who's going to get them running about a bit. Yeah. Really, Neil Warnock always said, you've got to run about more than the opposition. That's rule number one.
Yeah. OK, that is rule number one. Why haven't the players themselves got the respect for the shirts and take responsibility and run around themselves? That's point number one at any football club. As a professional footballer, that's the minimum requirement. You get 6 out of 10 from anybody in the game if you're seen to be trying. But if you're not, so why on this? Let's just use this situation at West Ham, because we could speak about any manner of clubs in the past and players. But why has it come to this?
Well, I couldn't agree more. I mean, when you asked me about Pellegrini, first of all, the first thing I did was name other people that I was responsible for this as Pellegrini, and the first people you go to are the players, because it can't be that, Mark Noble looked like having a stand-up fight with one of his own players in the week at Crystal Palace. Whatever that was over. Yep. You look at, if you had 11 guys who were running about like Mark Noble, even at his age, when his legs aren't, if you had, you would not be one of the bottom three. It's simple as that. Not with that talent.
That game against Tottenham, which was Mourinho's first game at West Ham. Mark Noble was by a street the best player. I mean, just by a street. Again, Martin know more about this than me, but you have got to ask questions to think about the wider culture of the club. And I know this is a particular bugbear of mine. I also accept that, that progress maybe did mean moving away from Upton Park, but I still feel the club are suffering from that. In terms of results, I mean, the results show that their home form, I think, is not as good. It's
not as good, although this is the worst run. Yeah. West Ham are on the worst run, since about 5 or 6 years, and that was at Upton Park. Yeah. I mean, if it's your team, and I had, I think, 4 family members there yesterday, maybe 5. You're aware that there's a little bit of a myth about how much of a fortress Upton Park was. I don't think we beat Arsenal there for about 15 years. I mean, it was, But it's the problem that it's created for the club, with this constantly having to try to appease everyone. Here's Jack Wilshere, here's another ball player, here's another £40 million striker who doesn't turn out to be quite worth 40 million quid. It's all of that, because they're trying to win. They're trying to win the sort of hearts and minds of the supporters all the time, and the way that that's done, you spend a lot of money and you get. You
get some results.
I
must say, I saw the interview post-match yesterday with Declan Rice. He looked absolutely devastated. I mean, he really looked shell-shocked. So it's not as if the players don't care as such. You just feel with some recent performances, there's a lack of structure there. And there's a lack of passion and desire. And I just think that's unforgivable. I mean, I'm not talking about every player, but, Pellegrini's... I think has been judged and has been fired on the level of performance, and that lack of, real push and desire. And I guess why we're talking about David Moyes getting the job rather than, say, Chris Hughton, who I think would be an excellent choice, who would keep them up, or even going back to Big Sam, who obviously did the sort of the Red Adair job in the past, is because they see David Moyes as slightly longer term. And if they're giving him an 18-month contract, it's because they want David Moyes, who I think have no doubt about it will keep them up this season, and then push on. And it's then pushing on to the top 8, pushing on to the top 6, because that's what he did year in, year out with Everton. We deride David Moyes, I think, or certainly some supporters here, I'm sure we don't, in that he was so solid, so reliable, so consistent at Everton. That almost becomes, in the modern era, almost boring, and we forget what a huge achievement and what a huge job he did at Everton, at Goodison, because that slightly gets lost along the way of recent times. But if David Moyes stays for the long term at West Ham will be a solid, reliable, consistent Premier League club.
We're talking about this idea, as you say, about them not running about. And ultimately, and I always believe this, it comes down to the manager. That's why the manager's paid the money. If they're not running about, OK, we can blame them. Ultimately, they're not running about for that manager. The manager is not doing his job. He's not getting them running about. He's not getting through to them for some reason. They need somebody, if, as Martin says, if Felipe Anderson is not tracking back, helping his fullback, they need to get a manager who's going to make sure he does do that.
Yeah. West Ham's best player wrote off a Lamborghini, or close to wrote off a Lamborghini on Christmas Day whilst dressed as a snowman. Now, that would suggest that the discipline at the club is not all it should be, basically, And the wonderful reports of him being on the phone saying to someone, "Don't call me stupid, don't keep calling me stupid." If you're dressed as a snowman and you've written your calf because your snowman outfit has fallen down over your eyes, I don't see there's any other word. You know, so that sort of stuff, they want someone who's going to get a little bit of a grip now. Could just be that Mikel Antonio likes a bit of a laugh and it was all a bit of fun and stuff like that. But if that's West Ham's best player, which he most certainly is at the moment, he's you know, he's him against the world in some of these matches. He could have broken his legs. You might not have seen him again. You know, he could have killed someone. That's you know. But if we're just reducing it to the football aspect and the professionalism aspect, the man could have put himself out of football for a year. You know, you want someone that, you know, I doubt very much when Fergie was in charge of Manchester United, if anyone was pulling a Lamborghini into the car park whilst dressed as a snowman, just in case Alex happened to be looking out the window. Maybe Lee Sharp, yeah, but it didn't last long, did it?
I know there was definitely one or two fast cars written off.
Oh yes.
That underpass by the airport in
Yeah.
Manchester, I can't remember who it was. I won't even name names just in case. I don't want to start libelling people. You know what, Crossy, I thought it was all going wrong at West Ham. I don't know if you saw a piece a couple of weeks ago, well, about a month ago, with Mark Noble in the Evening Standard. I want to put all these claims to bed that, or nail this myth that, you know, people aren't trying the training ground and there's any kind of dissatisfaction or disaffection. When anybody you spoke to with the loosest connection with West Ham at that time would say, this place is a joke. Around the training ground at that point in time, and yet the captain was saying, no, everything's fine here, don't worry. Yeah,
you've got to be honest, I think, sometimes, and I think Mark Noble's trying to be honest there and trying to sort of suggest otherwise, flying in the face of what everyone else can see on the pitch. I mean, I do feel sorry for Mark Noble because I think he's such a smashing leader and he's such a great captain down the years. And I just think sometimes his passion for the team, his commitment has been betrayed by other players, isn't it, really? It's so... I think that the dressing room dynamic is so important to build, and it's so easily disrupted by not necessarily even, you know, a couple of bad apples, but people pulling in the wrong direction. And I just think that sometimes it strikes me that West Ham have to have a clearer vision and clearer one direction of people signing players, and a very clear method of who's going to improve and what they're going to get. I mean, we heard so much about sort of Pablo Fornals, for example, as a sort of a signing as he'd ready-made for the Premier League. We've seen flashes of him, you know, even yesterday, and I just feel sometimes you get the impression who's making that signing. Are they doing it for the right reasons? And I think whoever comes in, it's clearly going to be David Moyes, isn't it? Needs to know that he's going to be allowed to have some say in signings, because it's so important, that dynamic, that you have the right dressing room equilibrium. Otherwise, everything is undone by players acting the idiot, not pulling their weight on the field. And I just think West Ham is completely undone by that ill discipline in many ways.
I also think it's an interesting point you make about ambition, because to be honest, I share your opinion of David Moyes. I'm a big fan of his, and I think he'd be a good appointment. Is David Moyes an ambitious appointment? Is it an ambitious appointment for West Ham? I mean, I'm thinking about people like, you know, why OK, so Pellegrini ticked a few boxes, as you say. He was a league winner. He was a league winner in Manchester City, where they had a lot of he had a lot of money to spend. To me, that wasn't an ambitious appointment. Is David Moyes an ambitious? Somebody like, why don't they go for somebody young and hungry? You know, well, I don't know. Why don't they go for?
I think you can say Marco Silva.
Well, Eddie Howe or somebody. You know, I mean, I am surprised that Eddie Howe is not being mentioned in a lot of these conversations that we've been having about new managers.
Do you know, the run is on.
Do you not
Final
think,
point.
Do you not think with Eddie Howe it's more that he wouldn't leave Bournemouth in the middle of the season, probably after all his time there, and West Ham aren't in a position to wait. You know, this is completely driven by circumstance. I mean, they've sacked a manager. Their next match is tomorrow. You know, no, tomorrow.
Which is Bournemouth.
They're
playing Bournemouth next.
You know, do you know what I mean? That's what a state of panic they're in at the moment. You know, they think they've got to beat Bournemouth, and I think that's what would have put the kibosh on Eddie Howe.
But essentially that's short-termism again, isn't it?
But it's all short-termism, isn't it? The survival thing is all about short-termism, isn't it? It's all about we cannot afford to lose this money. Everyone's looking at the Championship table and looking at Stoke.
Yeah, see how congested it is.
Do you know what I mean? Stoke are heading towards League 3, whatever it is, Division 3.
League 1.
League 1, Division 3.
Where's Sunderland now?
15th tier.
15th in the table.
Yeah, there you go.
In League 1. Yeah. OK, we're going to talk about the new manager bounce next, because Carlo Ancelotti's off to a flyer at Everton. He's won his first 2 games yesterday. Big win for him at St James's Park against Newcastle. Welcome back. We will get on to Everton in a few moments' time, but this is a Merseyside special in part 2 today of the programme. Those of us with a certain vintage Crossy, I think we probably all are on this table, will remember Liverpool's performance against Nottingham Forest, the 5-0 in April 1988, a few days after the FA Cup semi-final between the two teams. That's seen as one of the elite perfect performances in the top flight. Did we see something similar at the King Power in their 4-0 destruction of Leicester a couple of days ago?
Yes, I think we absolutely did. I mean, I'll always look back upon that Forest game as it epitomised what Liverpool's philosophy was at that particular time. So you could argue that they had better teams, I would say, in the early 80s, late 70s even, and, you know, they swept all before them. But why that team was so special, it was pass and move, and it was absolutely fabulous to watch. It was a complete destruction of arguably the second best team in the country at that time, and I thought that's what set Liverpool apart on Boxing Day night. It was just absolutely sensational. I have to say, I've seen...
Can you compare what Liverpool were in '88 with the current team? Is there any comparison in terms of style? And you said that word, philosophy. It's
the teams are so different now in the way that they are set up. And I was out in Doha and I actually saw John Barnes and did a piece with John Barnes, and I was sort of saying, can you compare, you know, your generation and this generation? He said, well, look, if we played our team with this current team, we would beat them 5-0 under the current rules. Why? Because of the physicality of it. We'd kick them off the park, basically. Could you compare this, you know, playing by this current generation's rules, i.e. sort of kind of the way that the total football, not a lot of tackling going on, as compared to our team, they basically beat us 5-0. So you just cannot compare the two. So it is a strange, you know, sort of territory. It is a strange comparison to make. But I just think why it reminded me of that was they're just so dominant of the second best team in the country at the moment. Yes, Leicester had a bad day at the office, and yes, they could, you know, they probably made mistakes with some of the tactics. I would argue, you know, Maddison didn't get into the game. He looked a little bit lost. Vardy was a bit isolated. So it wasn't a great performance by any means. Certainly dropped shy of the incredible standards they've set so far this season. But I just think that was also partly down to Liverpool's brilliance. And I just love watching them play. And the weird thing is that even though they find themselves streets ahead, some of the performances of late, they've been getting through games. And suddenly they'd switched the turbo boost, and they were magnificent at Leicester. From the full-backs, I mean, Alexander-Arnold was absolutely sensational. I mean, it was a man-of-the-match performance off the scale, 10 out of 10, fabulous. Robertson is brilliant on the other side, the free-flowing thing. I'm a huge fan of Joe Gomez. I think he is Virgil van Dijk's best defensive partner. I thought he played brilliantly. He brought something to the party. Henderson will be, without a shadow of a doubt, a contender for Player of the Year, I think, come the end of the season. He's been in fantastic form. You know, the midfield seemed to click. There's been question marks over Keita. That clicked. The front three were sensational. It was the all-encompassing, brilliant performance that epitomises this Liverpool team. Oh, you know, City in the last couple of seasons have taken the Premier League to new heights, and Liverpool this season have taken it on as a challenge and improved it. And I love that challenge. They're magnificent to watch, Liverpool. Brilliant to watch.
You brought a tear to my eye.
Oh, I just think they're
Can we get
absolutely
that
wonderful.
clipped up and play some mood music behind Cross's last 90 seconds?
We will look back upon certain generations in the Premier League.
You're choking me up.
I'm going even stronger. Who on earth, and I'm probably putting the kiss of death on this, who on earth is going to beat Liverpool this season?
OK, who's going to beat them? Martin, Ollie?
Well,
someone's got to beat them. Someone's got to find a way to say, no, we will beat them.
Somebody may well beat them when we least expect it, and maybe if they take their eye off the ball, look, their lead is getting to a point now where, you know,
it's embarrassing for the rest of the Premier League.
Where they may be able to, I hate to say it, but where they may be able to relax a little bit. I mean, I think the big danger for Liverpool was always going to be the pressure that they were going to come under as the title drew near, because they've wanted it so badly for so long. The way things are going, there isn't going to be any pressure, because, you know, Martin was saying earlier, I think, you know, to me, Leicester are a fine side, and I think Brendan Rodgers has done a fantastic job there. Man City are the big danger to Liverpool, or they were the big danger. And as important as Liverpool's own form is and this unbelievable run that they've been on, so it is important that this time Manchester City aren't breathing down their neck in the way that Liverpool were breathing down City's neck last season. So, I mean, I think it's hard to see them. It is hard to see them being stopped. And just one other thing about those comparisons you talk about, and without, aping John a little bit in terms of his praise for Liverpool. I mean, Alexander-Arnold, to me, he's a breathtaking talent. And we talk about this. You mentioned Nottingham Forest earlier, and they always used to say that stuff about John Robertson ran the game from left midfield or left wing. Sometimes Alexander-Arnold runs the game from right back. You know, and people talk about he's too good to play right back, he should be in midfield. He is making right back most important position in that Liverpool team sometimes. I mean, that Liverpool team is full of fantastic talents, and I've always thought Firmino was the guy who makes them tick in many ways, but some of the stuff that Alexander-Arnold's doing, his talent is frightening.
It's interesting to hear Klopp talk. I know you weren't at King Power, were you? No, but listening to Klopp after the game and talking about Firmino, the point you've just made actually, and he said if someone asked him because he'd scored, and someone asked him about the management of him, and Klopp said, "You're not here to score goals. You're the link man. You're the conductor for this team. You're here to bring other players. Don't worry, relax. It'll all come for you. But your responsibility isn't to score goals." I just thought it was a little, when we need a little bit of insight into someone's managerial technique or the way that they talk to players. It was clear. He said, I have had the conversation with him, and it was to say, don't worry, you're the conductor for everything else that happens in this team.
He's got the team perfectly set up. I thought last season, actually, that player for player, I think we remember doing some sort of composite team or something like that, and having 6 Liverpool players into Man City's 5 or something, and you know, and everyone reacted, you know, with predictable understatement.
Badly.
Exactly. But I do think I cannot remember seeing a better set up team and squad than Liverpool this season. Even the Ferguson era Manchester United teams. This is so well balanced.
What about Chelsea 04-05, Mourinho 05-06, two successive Premier League? They were durable.
No, they were.
I know they could be beaten, and they were, but they started the season in electrifying form both seasons.
I'm just looking at this team at the moment, and if you're going team of the season, it's every position virtually. It's every position virtually.
Well, let's go through who.
I think that's not a bad comparison though, because they were a machine, that Chelsea side. They were a fantastic unit who everybody knew what they were doing. Everybody, you know. We were talking earlier about managers and how the buck always stops with them. I mean, I think one of the most impressive things about what Liverpool are doing this season is that they came so close last season. They put in that superhuman effort, and they still couldn't catch City. City still wouldn't crack. I thought they might fade this season. I thought they might have a reaction to that, and you fall away. That side falls away a little bit because they couldn't do it. Klopp's made sure it's the opposite. It's the absolute opposite. They've gone at it with a fury that that nobody can even get close to.
Yeah.
And you almost credit Guardiola, because Guardiola set a standard where Liverpool have had to go, right, you can't lose. It's as simple as that. Here's what you need to do to win the league. You can't lose.
I don't know upset. I don't know upset Everton fans, but I also know the answer to this, Crossy. I've just mentioned Chelsea, that sort of 04-05, Mourinho 05-06. Martin mentioned the great Sir Alex Ferguson sides. We go back to Liverpool in the 80s. Is there a team that in an era around 2003-04 that you can think of that could hold a candle to this current Liverpool
Well, look,
side?
I do think that Liverpool and the comparison will be against the Invincibles simply because Arsenal...
Because you're going to write about it. Yeah.
Well, of course I will, but Arsenal were magnificent in that time, and they did. They achieved a unique title-winning season that year without losing a game, and I still think that on its own is just a fabulous achievement. But it was such a different type of lineup, such a different... You couldn't possibly compare like for like and wonder who would win, because Arsenal were a team of giants, an absolute team of monsters in that year. I mean, people, you could line them up basically. All their big rivals would say, well, we were beaten in the tunnel. When we looked at the cross at, Vieira, Campbell, the whole works basically, Thierry Henry, it was just a team of great exception and wonderful thing. But I do think Liverpool now have got the opportunity to go that season unbeaten.
If Liverpool go the season unbeaten, if they match the Invincible season, if they are unbeaten, they will blow Arsenal's points total out the water. That's the other thing.
Well,
I mean,
Sir Alex said
too many draws. Too many draws, as Fergie always said.
12,
we need to talk. Sorry, guys. We need to talk Carlo and his impact at Everton. 2 successive victories. Dominic Calvert-Lewin scoring twice yesterday at St James's Park. We talk about the impact that a new manager can have, but this guy has got not only class, but he's also got pedigree. Look at his history as not just a footballer, but his history as a coach, which is the crucial thing, the crucial element.
I mean, he's the best, isn't he? Statistically, certainly in terms of Champions League, he's the best. I think, didn't you write a column, Martin, about if Everton can get him, why wouldn't they? I mean, there was this kind of idea that
no, people saying, "Oh, get a modern, young, forward-thinking, progressive, young, modern coach."
And there is absolutely there is an argument for that. But if you are Everton and you can get the most storied, decorated coach, basically in football history, why wouldn't you? I mean, and the start that he's made is very, very early days. But I think if there was a worry about it, would he be motivated to try and get Everton into Champions League places maybe when he's been the manager of the clubs he's managed and he's achieved what he's achieved? But equally, if you can get Carlo Ancelotti at Everton and he can improve you, then why wouldn't you do it? And I think it's a huge coup for Everton and actually for our league that he is back in it. And I think the start that he's made, I say it's incredibly early days, but it's a no-brainer.
Always one of the points in the piece I already mentioned, one of the points I can remember making is about Alan Shearer going to Blackburn and saying that when he went to Blackburn, Kenny Dalglish told him one thing that improved his game immeasurably, that he went from a guy that scored 1 goal every 3 or 4 games at Southampton to 1 every 2 at Blackburn. And that was because of a couple of things that Kenny Dalglish told him, because Kenny Dalglish was a sensational coach, about how to score goals and about what to do when you're in shooting positions and things like that. And you just look at Carlo Ancelotti and you think, well, if he can go around that Everton squad, and with all of his experience of working with great players and stuff like that, and saying, well, this is what Gareth Bale did, and this is what this is what I told Karim Benzema, this is... Well, why wouldn't you... I mean, I don't know that it's down to Carlo, but Calvert-Lewin is scored in both games.
Well, he's clearly happy man.
He's happy. Now, you think that with all of his experience, Carlo might have a couple of things he can tell Calvert-Lewin that a good young manager, might not know yet, because he hasn't had 30 years at the top like Carlo.
Yeah, and I mean, the Carlo's quotes this morning about Calvert-Lewin, he said he's a fantastic striker, fantastic with his head and clever in the box, he's so sharp, he's still young, still a time to improve. He's a humble guy. He doesn't talk a lot, but I think he'll be at the top in England and in Europe. He's got all the qualities. He's had less than a week working with him, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's already made. That is already an assessment of a young player. He's seen something in him. He's believed in him and said, "You're my man."
And Calvert-Lewin will look upon that and say, "I've got one of the best managers in recent times, in recent European football history," and he believes in me, and he will feed off that. He will absolutely. Ancelotti's so calm. He exudes confidence. He exudes, wonderful belief amongst the players. And Calvert-Lewin, I don't think anyone will question his work rate, his ability. He's definitely clearly got something. The one thing that's been missing of Calvert-Lewin's game, isn't it, has been goals. And now, if he can add that, and he's on the right lines already, then there's no doubt about it in my mind that Calvert-Lewin is potentially a senior England striker, because he's got absolutely every attribute. His finish, I thought, for his first one in particular, I mean, he almost tripped over the second one, didn't he? But was a brilliant poacher's finish. And that was a lovely, lovely finish. But his all-round work rate was still there. And I just think that Ancelotti will definitely get the best out of him. And he'll do the same for other players that have... I think we deride Everton a little bit in the basic. They've got some very good players. Lucas Digne at left back. They've
maybe
got
even somebody like Moyes Keane, who supposedly had disciplinary issues or whatever. Obviously had that farce with Duncan Ferguson when he came on for 18 minutes or whatever it was. Somebody like him is going to look, I would have thought, at Carlo Ancelotti with his history in Italy and think,
I've got a chance here.
Yeah, can learn from this guy. OK, they're certainly doing well so far. 2 wins in a row for Carlo Ancelotti since he took the Everton job. Good win away from home yesterday at St James's Park. OK, next up, Crossy, it's his specialist subject. It's Arsenal. Welcome back with us this morning, social media king, Martin Samuel. John Cross, the real social media king. Not far behind him, Ollie Holt. Let's remind you what's in... we're going old school, analogue here. The papers, we've still got those. The hammer falls on Manuel Pellegrini, sacked yesterday after that defeat 2-1 at home to Leicester. Back of the Sun, same story, the hammer blow. Also this story here, Dean Smith in denial about his future at Aston Villa. Beaten yesterday at Watford. Troy Deeney scoring the goals, a couple of goals for him at Vicarage Road. Aston Villa are in trouble near the bottom of the table. Pep's not happy. They don't care. This is Guardiola talking about the festive fixture programme. He knew what he was getting when he took the Man City job, but he's still not happy about it. But he is going to stick around for 2020, the Guard of Honour. He'll be here next Christmas. Simon Mullock on the back of the Mirror this morning says that Guardiola's going nowhere. He's going to stay. He's going to see out his contract at the Etihad. We've just been talking about this man and his manager, Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Carlo Ancelotti steering Everton to their second successive victory. Yesterday, that one at St James's Park. Here to stay, Troy Deeney, getting some stick yesterday at Vicarage Road. He scored again. A couple of goals for him against Aston Villa. Bar humbug. Harry Kane scoring, but Norwich not happy with a couple of decisions that went against them yesterday at Carrow Road. Martin's grunty. He's going to be grunty in a second because I mentioned this social media. We're going to get on to Cross's pet subjects Arsenal in a moment and all things Arsene Wenger. He wishes. But this is the social media game that the Sunday Times have helpfully pointed out, the influence of social media on footballers. They've got a 25 questions here, right, Martin. Yeah. It's multiple choice. The only one I can actually read out on air safely is question number 8, which is what was Ryan... You'll remember this. What was Ryan Babel's tweeted response when referee Howard Webb gave Manchester United a dubious penalty against his Liverpool side in 2011? Did he A, was it a photograph of Webb's Stretford End season ticket? B, a mock-up of Webb in a United shirt? C, I'm surprised you haven't really said the answer, a photograph of Sir Alex Ferguson signed, "Thanks for all your help." Or D, a reminder that Webb's Twitter name was at I Love Man U?
I think that whole question's wrong. Didn't he express it through the medium of jazz dance?
Did he?
Yeah, I think you'll find he did. Yeah, I'm not buying it. I'm not, mate, I'm sorry. I wouldn't even know. I wouldn't know. I don't care.
You got fined for it. I think you got fined for it. You must have read the papers a few weeks later.
I read the papers.
Fined for it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It just didn't...
Was it B?
It just didn't register with me. as in any way significant.
It was B, wasn't it?
Yeah. See, crossing, I know.
We're on it.
In any way significant.
I don't remember it just because it's 8 years ago. That's the problem I've got with it. It's so long ago.
I remember 8 years ago.
OK, we need to talk Mikel Arteta, don't we?
Yeah.
First home game in charge of Arsenal. It's all full of firsts. First game last week against Bournemouth, or a few days ago, should I say. This afternoon he's got a big one. This is Chelsea at home. How is Arteta settling into life as Arsenal's head coach?
Well, good, I think. Listen, I think it's a gamble, but I also think it's a bold and a brave one. And I think Arsenal needed to do something different. They really did. And I just think Arteta, you judge it by people who are proven in the Premier League. You know, Guardiola rates him so highly. You know, Pochettino wanted to bring him in as his number 2 when Arteta quit as a player. His coaching methods are outstanding. You talk to City players, they rave about him, they like him one-to-one. Listen, I think one of the biggest problems that Arsenal have had in recent times, particularly under the Emery era, is that basically that lack of connection between the fans and the team and the manager. And I think he's immediately winning that connection back. I love the way he speaks. I love the way he sort of gets that connection, the way he understands the fans. He's bringing back the passion. I think he's got a huge job on top of him, because at the start of the season I would have said that squad is easily capable of finishing top 4, and I really believe that.
And so did Emery's boss.
Well, clearly, and they wanted that top 4 finish, and unfortunately the damage that has been done has left the squad in somewhat disarray, in somewhat of needing rebuilding. I think Aubameyang is still scoring goals, but looks, I think, on other occasions as if he's, basically wants to leave, and he can't get out of there quick enough, really. And I think that's a shame. But he wants to play Champions League football, and I can understand that. Jacques has had his bust up with the fans, and he probably would like to leave. I'm sure in January with the right offer. That's where you are, and all those challenges are sent to sort of really test Arteta, and it's going to be a difficult season. But what struck me in watching the Bournemouth game was that for the first time I can remember in a long time, in fact going through it, I think the first time since about January, when Arsenal played Chelsea with a tactical plan. They played with a diamond 2 up top, and they won the game. It was energetic, it was ferocious, it was decent, and you think they're going places under Emery. For the first time, Arsenal had a structure to their team. They've got missing bits all over the place. They've got no left back, so they're having to play a teenage winger at left back. That's difficult. They've got centre halves out left, right, and centre, and so you're left with the sort of the emergency situation of bringing on Mustafi and other bits around the thing. But you felt as if there was an energy and a direction and a structure. I think Arteta's going to be a really good, strong appointment. It's going to take time. It's not going to be overnight. But finally, you have an Arsenal team with some sort of direction. You have a manager who understands the club, who's a former captain. I think the fans like him. I think they're on board with it. And suddenly you get a fresh energy and a fresh belief. It's actually exciting to think you might go and watch an Arsenal team that might get a few results along the way. Huge
responsibility for a guy who's 37 years old. And I know that he has been touched by the genius of Pep at Manchester City. But just from the outside, this is a huge responsibility for a club that's fortunes have been fading. So much happening, so much dissent and dissension between fans and players. Fans and fans as well.
Yeah.
Fans arguing with each other. And Arteta's, at his age, to my mind, at such a young age, is the guy responsible for knitting and stitching it all back together again.
Yeah, but we were talking earlier about ambitious appointments, and I do think, in a way, this is an ambitious appointment. I kind of agree with John about it. There's something fresh about it. It is a gamble, but as you say, he's been touched by the genius of Pep. He's also obviously worked under some great managers as a player, not least Arsene Wenger. So I think in terms of an apprenticeship, he's not had a bad one. He's young, he's obviously got an immense amount to prove, he's under a lot of pressure, but I think it is a good appointment. And I know maybe as journalists we sometimes make too much of the fact that they know the club and they know what it takes, all that kind of thing, same kind of stuff we said about Solskjaer at Manchester United, but I do think it's important sometimes, and I think, you know, we'll talk about Frank Lampard later, but sometimes that connection with the fans is really, really important. And, you know, you referred to it then, the Emirates has become, I think, the most toxic stadium. I mean, there's a high bar here when we're talking about the London Stadium, but I mean, I think the Emirates has become the most toxic stadium, most toxic fan base in the country, because, you know, there's such a well of bitterness there. So that's one thing that Arteta has to cope with. The other is an ownership that, frankly, feels sometimes semi-detached. I was reading about some of the costs of the new LA Rams stadium in LA the other day. I mean, eyes are going to be elsewhere. There's a lot on his plate, and that's before we start talking about the team. I mean, I think Ozil is another thing. You know, that situation has been allowed to fester for too long. It's reminiscent of
infuriating.
It's the Paul Pogba situation, same as the Paul Pogba situation. You want it fixed one way or another. Either play the guy, make him acknowledge that he is one of the most talented players of his generation, put him in the team, make him the fulcrum, make him feel great like you do with Pogba, or let him go. Do one or the other. It's festering, you know, and so these are the things that are in his in-tray, but I think he's an ambitious appointment.
He's a man with something to say.
Ollie's point about the team, I mean, where I would disagree with Johnny, I mean, John looks at the Arsenal squad and sees a potential top four. I look at the Arsenal squad and see a potential bottom half. I mean, and I think that's the biggest problem that he's got. I don't think Arsenal got the players. I think they've got central midfield players who can't put a tackle in unless it's in their own area and it's a penalty. They've got two cracking forwards, but the defence is all over the place. You go to Arsenal matches and you just think, well, this needs such an upgrade. This needs such an upgrade.
I mean, did you just say before you do an emergency measure like bringing Mustafi on at centre back? I mean, he's a centre back, isn't it? I mean, that kind of.
This is the point.
Coming on with fire alarms, that's the problem.
This is the point, isn't it? I think that basically started the season where I would argue that Arsenal started with two of the best fullbacks around, potentially Bellerin and Tierney.
Yeah.
You've surely got to be able to perm two decent centre halves from about 6, even though David Luiz, you know, I don't think was a very good signing at all.
Not if none of them are decent.
Torreira, he was brilliant to see him play in actually his correct position at the base of midfield at Bournemouth, and that gave the team some structure. Nicolas Pepe, there's a player there, there really is, and then you've got two of the best forwards in the Premier League. The point I'm trying to make is that during the course of this season, whereas I thought Arsenal, they've got a top 4 squad, and I really mean that basically it's disintegrated. This is the point, that basically you've had the Xhaka incident, you've had Aubameyang getting increasingly frustrated. Lacazette will want to go if they don't finish top 4. He absolutely will. Torreira has become disheartened. The fullbacks, you know, are out. The centre halves, what are you going to do with that?
When you've got a centre half situation,
there's been their best players, the goalkeeper.
But when you've got a centre half situation which at the start of the season everybody knew needed to be fixed, and you buy David Luiz.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, he's a wonderful player in many ways, David Luiz, but he's a luxury player. He's not what Arsenal need.
No, they bought him because they're trying to sign a leader rather than... They bought him for his leadership rather than his defensive abilities. They found out, unfortunately, along the way that if he's not playing, and he hasn't been playing every single week, that actually is not that much of a good leader when he's not playing because he's unhappy. And that's the issue, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to say is that the squad is disintegrated. And in a short space of time, 6 months, that squad has gone from being, I think, a team which should be finishing top 4 to needing to be into a rescue position, and that's where Arteta takes up. He's not going to finish top 4 this season, but I think in the longer term, Arteta will get them back into the top 4 without doubt.
OK, well, look, let's move on because we need to talk a little bit about Frank Lampard and Chelsea here because they were so impressive last Sunday at Tottenham and the victory and the manner of it. And, of course, the next day, the tactical genius, and he's got the upper hand over Jose and put him in his place. OK, we accept that. A few days later, it's Boxing Day. and they lose at home to Southampton.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they so inconsistent?
Well, because in part, certainly at the back, it's a young team. You get young centre halves in there and stuff, which is not helpful. And it lends itself. It's a team. It's a very, very different Chelsea team to the ones we've seen in previous seasons. So it needs to knit. And when the team needs to knit, there will be inconsistency. It's. I'm looking here for a more complicated answer than that, but I don't think there is one really.
Martin, okay, cards on the table. Look, we all like Frank. Okay,
yeah.
So we'd all say that straight away. We want him to do well. But if you were going to be critical of at the point you've just made there, Martin, some people would say, well, he finished third last season.
Yeah,
under a guy that the fans hated, who signed off with Europa League, his first trophy ever.
Yeah, but so for one thing, they're operating under a transfer ban. For another, part of what Martin just said there, but experience would tell all of us that young players will have highs, but they will also have dips. And that seems to be exactly what is happening here. There have been some fantastic performances from some of those players, but everybody, Ferguson, every manager will tell you that, there comes a time when young players get tired. That lack of experience starts to show. And in a team where so much of the optimism around Chelsea this year has revolved around the fact that he's given, the performances that Tammy Abraham, Mason Mount, Tomori have put in have been key to this kind of reinvention of Chelsea, I think. But they're going to have dips. And that's, I think, as you say, we all like Frank, so we're trying to maybe give him credit. But I think they've overachieved so far. And okay, yeah, they're not where they were under Sarri, but this is a new start. And this is, the beginning of something better.
Yeah. But they've also lost their best player. Eden Hazard, arguably one of the best players of his generation in the Premier League.
And not being able to even try and replace him.
No, absolutely. Frank Lampard has almost been his own worst enemy. He's set the bar so high in the early part of the season, when they have a few inconsistencies now, which young players inevitably do, then people begin to question. But I have to say, I don't think the fans are, because they're so on board with the Lampard, the Lampard era. And listen, I still think he's got a great chance of finishing top four. I think Lampard is excellent.
And they are in the top four as things stand, of course. They play Arsenal, of course, later this afternoon. OK, next up, as Ollie was at Turf Moor last night, I think we should do the decent thing. Let's talk a bit about Manchester United and their victory against Burnley last night. That's coming next, along with Sheffield United and Man City. You're watching the final Sunday supplement of the of 2019. Shortly, you'll be watching the final goals on Sunday of 2019. Let's find out what Alex and Cammy are up to. Alex.
Good morning. We have so much coming up, Cammy, don't we, today?
Can we fit it all in?
I don't know. Armpit Gate, obviously West Ham.
Yeah, Pellegrini gone, Moyes in. I presume the boys have already been talking about that.
Yeah, but we will continue the discussion. Join us at 11:30.
So animated. They're looking forward to getting through all those subjects. They'll be talking VAR, Cammy's favourite subject, I'm sure, in a few minutes' time. That, of course, goes on Sunday. 11:30 follows us here on the Sunday supplement. Ollie, thanks so much for making the trip, because it's a long trip back from Turf Moor. Did you see the new Manchester United emerging? Good result for them. They went and won away at Turf Moor. I think they had to react given their performance. Definitely had to react given their performance at Watford last weekend.
It's not that far, by the way, Turf Moor. It's not like I was in Russia or something, but it's the frozen north. But
we've all made that trip on a Saturday night back from Manchester, that vicinity.
Yeah. Anyway,
I think it's a long. I think
you know what?
Trip
it was worth the trip, because United. I thought United were really good. Actually, I was impressed by them, and I guess there's not often in their recent troubles that you could say that, but I think there are definite signs there that they are, they're beginning to turn a corner. There's a lot of promise in that side, particularly an attack. They're a bit more solid at the back. I think there was a lot of satisfaction that they managed to keep a clean sheet. all the cliches about Burnley not being an easy place to go, I think are true. Although, to be honest, Burnley didn't offer a lot apart from quite a muscular approach. But there was some very... Brandon Williams at left-back was very, very good. The young players, I think that one of the most pleasing things for United fans and for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was that some of the young players really stood up. I mean, Rashford's been superb all season, but he was very good again. I thought Daniel James he will be black and blue this morning, but he, as Solskjaer said in the press conference afterwards, he keeps getting back up, you know, and he had an excellent game. Pereira laid on the first goal with a superb ball. There were a lot of really good things, and one thing that I think also a lot of people remarked upon, Fred was possibly the man of the match in the centre of that midfield. He's been, you know, he's had a lot of stick, since we were talking earlier, possibly because of the size of his transfer fee, but he played really well. And I think, you know, they're 1 point now off the top four. It feels like it's been a bit of a long haul, but you talk about how the fact that we all like Frank. I really hope it works for Solskjaer. I like the tone that he set, and I think, as I say, there are signs that he made a big point again of the fact that United need to buy the right type of players, and I think I think the players that they signed in the summer were good signings. They took them as Wan-Bissaka, James. You know, they weren't spectacular, but they took them forward. And I think another couple of windows, which is what he deserves, Solskjaer. I think we might start to see a decent Manchester United side there. And
no Paul Pogba yesterday.
No.
Solskjaer said that he'd had 2 games. Of course, came on as a substitute. Excuse me, at Vicarage Road last weekend. Played the game after. Where will Pogba? Where will that end? What was the sense yesterday?
Well, I think the sense certainly up in the press room was initially surprised that he hadn't travelled, because I think there had been some talk from United after the previous game that this was the beginning of building up his fitness again. So for him not to be involved at all was a surprise. Solskjaer said in the post-match press conference that Pogba felt that he'd had a bit of reaction to the 45 minutes he played against Newcastle, and didn't feel right. I think for a lot of people, you know, those young players put in a shift at Burnley yesterday. So it wasn't easy. They got booted around. They stood up, and I think there is an obvious contrast to make there between the fact that Pogba has been absent an awful lot, and I think Pogba has had some unfair criticism in the past, and has been made a scapegoat for some things that he shouldn't necessarily have been made a scapegoat for. Sure. But I think that his appearance record this season, I know he's been injured, but some of the, you know, off-field stuff that he's been doing when he's supposedly been injured doesn't look. It's not a great message. And I think that, again, we need to get to a situation where either Pogba is, because he is talent-wise, he's the best player at Manchester United. I mean, he's a phenomenal talent. He needs to be either at the centre of what they're doing, or they need to move him on.
Sure.
And I think maybe this window, we'll find out. I mean, it feels a little bit as if he is saving himself for a move, but we'll find out about that in the next few weeks.
Yeah, we certainly will. Let's cross the divide. Let's talk Manchester City and their defeat at Wolves. OK, they were down to 10 men, but this team, having won 2 Premier League titles in a row, and the challenge, of course, was to win a third. That was Pep's target at the start of the season. Has now lost, I haven't got the table in front of me, but I think it's 5 games, isn't it, already in the Premier League. What's gone wrong in their season?
Well, I do think, first and foremost, you need to point to their recruitment last summer. The failure, I think, to bring in a centre-half to play alongside and complement Laporte. And Laporte then has been a massive absence for them. But it feels like that whole structure then, as a result, has broken down. I mean, clearly Rodri, I think, will be a very good signing for them, but he's had kind of ups and downs. But I would have to question that support for for Guardiola, and I think Guardiola has been amazing for English football. I'd be absolutely devastated, I genuinely would, if he left Man City next summer, because he's just been, I think, a breath of fresh air. He's taken football to a whole new level. I'm really encouraged by, I think Simon Mullock has written largely, you know, a lot on Soriano, saying that Guardiola will definitely be here, and they clearly, genuinely believe that, and Simon clearly believes that as well. You can tell from the tone of what he's writing. That's refreshing to hear, because I want to see Guardiola rebuild that City team and go again. Because I just think that City will relish the new challenge that Liverpool have laid down for them. But I just feel that you can easily trace it back to not freshening up the squad enough. I mean, I was at Brighton, final game of the season last season, when City won the title, and Guardiola was talking about this squad is not strong enough, it's not big enough, it's not tall enough. We concede at set pieces, we do this, we need to improve. They've just won the most incredible title race ever, toe-to-toe with Liverpool, and yet he's already talking about how they must improve. Then I was at the Community Shield to him say that we couldn't afford Harry Maguire, and he's gone to Man United and he'll be really, really good at Man United. What is that about? I mean, it seemed to me that he was laying down the challenge. They've missed Company's leadership, I think, in the dressing room. I think not just as a centre-half, not just as an influential player on the pitch. And it just feels as if that era of that particular team finished last summer. And I think the very best, and City have been the very best, don't get me wrong, rebuild immediately before the panic sets in. And it seems to me that this season, unfortunately, it's unravelling during the season, when actually they perhaps should have addressed it to a greater degree last summer. And I just think for City to come back, they need to have a look at the sort of the direction. Do they need to freshen it up front? Do they need to? So they certainly need to strengthen it defensively. They certainly need a little bit more reinvention midfield. Well, David Silva, one of the best players of the Premier League era.
We'll leave at the end of the season.
Yeah, he's coming to the end, and I just feel they need to go again.
What's the incentive for Guardiola to go again here? To rebuild this City side, to freshen up, as John, the phrase that John just used. What's his incentive to say, OK, next season, we go again, we win the Premier League title?
Well, the fact that I would presume that Guardiola is a proud man. You don't want to finish any job 20 points off the pace. He's never been this far. He's never been this far behind anybody in his managerial career. He admitted that 2 or 3 weeks ago when they got beat by Manchester United. I think it was 12 or 14 points or whatever. And I can remember saying to him in the press conference, "You've ever been this far behind?" And he said, "No, it's a complete new experience for him."
Where's he going to get a better job? When I say that, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying Manchester City are a club of the standing, say, of Real Madrid or Juventus. Where's he going to get a situation where he's backed, where the whole system is set up for him, where he's the king? You know, where is he going to get that backing, where the whole hierarchy was brought in for him?
The problem with that...
3 years early as well.
Yeah.
3 years early. Not for him that year, but for him 2 or 3 years down the line when he wants it. The whole club was set up. Even the appointment of Pellegrini was set up so that Guardiola could come in. The whole thing is set up for him.
Wish I'd have known that. I think I linked a few managers with Why didn't you tell me that?
Yeah, well, there you go.
Back in 2012, where they lined him up. There's about 25 managers, mate.
That's the whole... You see, that's the problem they've got. Even if it did go disastrously wrong and they couldn't qualify for the Champions League or something like that, I'm not sure there's anybody at Man City who would feel empowered enough to walk over to Pep Guardiola and go, "Tell you what, mate, I think we've got as far as we can here." You know, so this is his for as long as he wants it. If he would have said, "I want to sign a 10-year contract," he'd probably get it. Sure. So, I just, Alex Ferguson did not leave Manchester United. The day after Aguero had stuffed him with the very last kick of the season. He left them once he put the league title on the table. Right, there we go. Thank you very much.
History.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
you know, I think Guardiola would feel the same. You don't want to leave a loser.
No, sure. OK, we think he'll stick around. He's a winner, judging by the bigger picture and the rest of Pep Guardiola's career. OK, next up we'll look back on a few highlights of 2019. We'll also look ahead to the new year and 2020. Oh, Martin's just taken us down a trip.
Yeah, down a dead end.
Such a nostalgic
West
programme.
Ham dead end.
He's talking about Dimitri Payet being the best ever player.
Yeah, he was.
Best ever West Ham player. What about
Best
Alan
one I've seen
Devonshire?
down there. Yeah, Alan Devonshire was a very, very
Trevor
good player.
Brooking.
Trevor Brooking, really good player. Joe Cole, really
Rio
good player.
Ferdinand.
None of them had the effect that Dimitri Payet did. None of them had the effect that Dimitri Payet did. None of them. I mean, if you look at the guy's numbers, he's making twice as many goal-scoring opportunities as any other player in Europe. Unreal. It's unreal.
What, now?
That season for West Ham.
Oh, that season for West Ham.
That season for West Ham.
Okay. Well, he's not around anymore. Let's talk about players who are around in moments. We're bereft of ideas. I don't know why for what our magic moments of 2019. I think mine actually up there would be Messi's goal in the free kick in the Nou Camp against Liverpool.
Yeah.
When I think an entire stadium knew he would score that. But then beyond that, after Liverpool had knocked out Barcelona, would be the Ajax Tottenham game in Amsterdam, which was sensational. What about your best moments or favourite moments? Or
well, look at this, mate.
I tried to look for some inspiration.
It's just remind us. Otherwise, you're going to pick the same three matches or whatever.
Well,
to get some reminders, you know.
I don't think we're bereft of ideas. I just think actually John and I certainly would probably pick the same one, which is Liverpool. For Barcelona nil. I mean, it's like that's a no-brainer. That was one of the greatest. We talk about great comebacks, and it has been a year of comebacks actually with Ben Stokes and Tiger Woods at Augusta. I mean, that was the greatest football comeback. Well, I suppose we've seen a few actually. Liverpool in Istanbul, Man United against Bayern Munich in the final. That was one of the best football nights ever been at Anfield against Barcelona. Messi on the pitch. You know, it's just Liverpool were amazing that night. Like the entire Barcelona team, I missed Alexander-Arnold's corner as well, which I was looking down, like most of the Barcelona team, for that fourth goal. It was just an amazing night, and very, very few people thought they could do that. But Anfield does have a knack. Those European nights, and that was one of the most special nights. That was certainly my football highlight.
Yeah, you saw that forlorn figure of Messi as well at Anfield as the goals started going in, and he realised actually we're in danger of losing this. Crossy?
Yeah, well, there's a couple that really stand out for me. I must say, like Ollie, but Man City, for a couple of reasons. I mean, Man City Tottenham, by the way, the Champions League quarter-final. I mean, what a game, what an advert for English football, what drama, what incredible... I mean, VAR as well, you know, deciding the game right at the death. I mean, it was an astonishing night. That passion, I love that, you know, from Pochettino and his players at the end. I can't wait for Pochettino, hopefully, to come back to English football soon. I think he was absolutely brilliant for Spurs. Sorry to see him go in 2019. But then also the most incredible title race for a different reason, in that toe-to-toe element of Man City, Liverpool, and just pushing themselves right to the end. And for Man City to win that under the most incredible, intense pressure, surely has to be Pep Guardiola's greatest achievement. And we quickly forget, actually, Man City, by the way, they won the treble. I mean, this is an astonishing achievement.
Actually, they won 4 trophies. They won the Community Shield as well, which you can't do. Martin.
What have I got left?
You know, Vincent Kompany. Vincent Kompany's goal for
Man City. Vincent Kompany, yeah. But no, what happened last year with the title race? Well, that's what made it so wonderful. Is they played their second match early. I think they play it the first week of January, Liverpool, Man City. So you haven't got that sort of safety blanket of, there's this 6-pointer coming up that could totally change it. So it became one of those title races where you just had to keep matching each other, and if the other lot won, you had to win. So every single game had this enormous import on it, and then City dropped points at Newcastle, I think it was on a Tuesday night, and everyone was, this is Liverpool, and then Liverpool dropped points at West Ham. So the title race, I thought, was just astonishing. But you know, Ollie's point about Liverpool Barcelona, that's one of the greatest matches you'll ever see.
Yeah, certainly a spectacular year in football. We'll look forward to another spectacular year as well in 2020. OK, we have run out of time, unfortunately, this morning. It's been a great chat. Thanks very much for joining us, Martin, Crossy and Ollie. We'll see you again very soon. Happy New Year. We're up next week at 10 o'clock. We'll see you then.
Sky Sports. Feel it all.